I think from talking to you in the past that you do have some clients that when you move them to assisted living or a care facility or some other place, they actually may find it's more enjoyable. What's a situation where that would be the case?
Oh, I have that.
Okay.
I'm still maintaining a building, but
Right.
on Union Street, but the building is generating enough money for the person to stay in assisted living. And I keep saying, "You want to come home?" No, I'm not ready. I mean, and I think she's having a social life that she never had before.
But one of the issues in the Bay Area is if you put a tenant into a property, there's a lot of rental protections for that tenant. You can't just automatically ask them to move.
And believe me, the tenants all know the rules. It fascinates me how they
Meaning,
know
meaning what?
the rules and how to stay there and how to
Right.
free rent and how to do. I mean, it's because the city really protects the renters. I have to say, which is kind of nice. I mean, I once years ago was a renter, but yeah, you got to be very careful with when you're renting out that you're doing it right.
Right, exactly.
'Cause
Have you
they
ever
can
been involved in any situations where you've had to sell a property, say a single family home for a family after someone passes away, or they're not coming back, and has been a tenant in the property and it's devaluing the property when you sell it? Have you ever seen that situation?
Yeah, when you have a protected tenant that's paying very minimal rent, they will stay there till they die. Wait, I mean, they should be able to, but it does really bring down the sale price because you have units that's not generating anywhere near the market value.
And the next buyer is going to inherit that same tenant under those
Absolutely.
same
Till the
rules. Right, right.
perpetuity, till they
Right. Have you ever been involved in a tenant buyout where it made sense to actually work with an attorney to
yes,
pay the tenant
yes,
to
and
move?
yes, and
Yeah.
yes. Because they got representation. They were renting a room in a house, and I had to sell the house. The guy died, the wife went off to live with her daughter, and we had to sell the property, and he wouldn't leave. And it got the rent bureau, what are they called in San Francisco? The rental whatever it is,
Rent board, the San
the
Francisco
rent
rent board.
board
Yes,
represented him.
yes. But I have, I've been involved in a lot of tenant buyouts for fiduciaries, both family and professional over the years. And, it ranges all over the Bay Area. Sometimes in areas with less restrictions, you can do it for a few $1,000s. And, I've been involved in ones in San Francisco where it's been $50 to $100,000 per tenant. But usually it only makes sense when the price that you're going to sell the property for eclipses what that buyout was. So with the tenant, it may have been $200,000 less. Without the tenant, it may be $200,000 more. Well, if you've paid that tenant $50,000 to move, it's actually still worth it. But that's a tricky calculation, and that's one of the things fiduciaries have to work with and
Oh,
consider.
absolutely. You have to, I
Right.
mean, you have to do a cost benefit on everything you do.
Exactly. No, that's great. So, okay, now we're just going to switch real quick to some real world experience. If you could kind of think of what was one of the most memorable property situations that you might have had to deal with over the years.
The most memorable. I love my hoarder houses.
Why is that? Why do you love hoarder houses?
Love it. It fascinates me how brains can do that, how
Right,
they
right.
collect stuff.
Right. Well,
I mean,
and you have a psychiatric social work
I know
background.
that,
Why do people have that
but
propensity?
usually, I mean, the psychology, it's usually related to trauma. There's some kind of trauma that went on in their life. But, a lot of people have trauma and they're not hoarders. But I'm fascinated by the I had one lady was paying for a storage space, several storage spaces for years, and I went in them, and they were just big and the whole house was like this too. Big garbage bags filled with paper, and not even papers that had any relation to, just paper,
Okay.
rolled it was
Now,
papers.
did she have a rhyme or reason to those, do you think?
No, she
No,
had
not even. Okay. Okay.
no. I had another house, I loved it. she saved all her family ashes. So all of there were all these urns with all these ashes. So I was able to find some relatives, and we got the ashes buried in a cemetery. So I used some money to do that. I mean, the people are dead,
No,
but
but I know from experience because of also cleaning out a lot of houses over the years, you will find urns in people's basements that, maybe were aunts and distant uncles that didn't have other relatives and they just got put down there. And then the trick for the fiduciary is now you were lucky to have family members there, but what do you do otherwise with, things like ashes? Have you had experience with that? And tell us the legal things only that you might do with them.
oh, I shouldn't say the illegals. I have, well, I'll just tell you what I do with the ashes. There's nobody. I take the ashes and and a bottle of champagne, and I go to the beach and I throw them in the bay. And I had a Jewish guy that, I mean, I knew he was Jewish. So I put on my phone and I played the Jewish prayer for the dead and threw in ashes in. And if there's a family, we all go together and we have a glass of champagne and we throw in the bay. And I know that's not legal, but I don't care. Better to throw it in the bay than leave it in your basement.
Right.
Uh,
No, no, absolutely, absolutely. And it's actually, as I said, it's actually a much more common occurrence than I think people, especially a newer fiduciary or someone thinking about this field, would actually be, would be aware of that does take place. So, okay, great. So hoarder houses are one. Any other scenarios that just come to your mind?
I had a case, it was in San Francisco, very nice house in a very nice neighborhood, and she was a recluse, and obviously the plumbing didn't work, so she would pee in bottles, so there were bottles of urine all over and poop in the bathtub, and yeah, it wasn't very nice when we finally got in there, but her mental illness didn't allow her to ask for anything, and there was plenty of money there. But yeah, it was a piece what we did, we finally were able to do a 5150 on her with the police. So we took her to first to the hospital and then to an assisted living, and then we went in the house. So we had the house standing there until she died. Didn't rent it, but we cleaned it out. And then when she died, we sold it, and of course, relatives did show we sometimes we find air finders, and they'll tell you the relatives will tell you, we tried, and she wouldn't relate to us, and but then they're there, and they the money.
Right. Okay. No, that's definitely a memorable situation. Now, what about memorable in maybe a little bit less positive way, meaning you had difficult family members, other people living in the properties, sort of impeding your ability to either help the person that's there or keep the property organized or sell the property, anything like that.
Wide unit building in San Francisco,
Hmm.
and son felt that he should have the whole thing, and he would get out and we kept had a lot of legal stuff going on.
So the son
And
lived in one of the units,
right,
and this
and
was his mother's home.
yes, it was
And was
and
there another, did he have a
yes,
sibling?
there was a sister,
Okay.
and
And this
she
was after the mom died?
right, and she
Yeah.
didn't want any well, first we had the mom in an assisted living. I was just the trustee, but I worked conservative person, and she was in assisted living and then in a nursing home, and I used to go visit her, see how she was, and he stayed there, and he managed the property, and I trusted him to, you know, do some but then I took over, then they had to send me the rents and all that, and he wouldn't get out, and we had to sell it. I try to come up with a plan for the sister and he to we'll sell it, and he was getting 2/3, she was getting 1/3. A plan where they could work together and split the income, and he could live there, and we charge him, he'd be charged the rent. She didn't want to have anything to do with him. No matter how I tried, because I thought that'd be a greater way to do it, be taking care of him. She'd get her money every month. Anyway, she would not go about that. So
Okay.
we had a lot of lawsuits to get him in and out, and it was a big waste of money. But
Okay.
and
So you had to have an attorney. Did he have an attorney?
oh, he had a lot of
Okay.
attorneys.
Did
I'm a
the other daughter have an attorney?
she
She
did too,
didn't. Oh, she
but
did
she
too. Okay. So, right,
because she
right,
didn't go to 1/3. It
right,
wasn't
right.
yeah.
And so he did not want to move out.
No,
So when you sold the building, was he still there?
no.
No.
I
Okay.
was able to get him out,
Okay. And
and
how did that
so
go about? Did he end up getting something to
he
move?
finally agreed to go out, to
Okay.
move.
With extra payment to him or no? Just for the two-third, one-third split?
Yeah, I don't think we paid him to move out, but it cost so much money in the back and forth with the lawsuits. And he said, "I'm gonna take my plants." I said, "Take your plants. Who cares? Take plants."
Yeah.
Oh
Yeah.
my
No,
god.
that brings up a very good point because I do get a lot of calls where there's a situation where there's a multi-unit building or a house and there is a relative, sibling, somebody living in there and the state says we want to sell it. And my first question is always, okay, well, is that person that's in there willing to go? Because if they're not, it could be almost sometimes impossible to sell. If you have a single family home with a hostile tenant or a hostile family member who's not letting you in, that house isn't going to sell. Or in your case, it was a multi-unit building, and if there's a son in there who's actually not paying rent because he was a son, that will greatly devalue the cost of the building. So those are good situations.
He'd
So
finally get out, and
right,
he got about $2 million so he
right,
could make himself
okay.
a life.
Okay,
Anyway,
that's
yeah.
no, that's an interesting scenario. So okay, now just quickly to go to a little bit of lessons and advice from all your many years of experience. And one of the things I think is important to note with most fiduciaries is that most of your experience is actually learned in the street. You can you can take classes and you can do that, but doing it and having a great mentor. I know you have mentored countless people over the years who, I think owe you a huge debt of gratitude for helping them become fiduciaries
Oh, yeah, I ran a group. It finally ended about a year ago. It was a mentoring group for newly licensed fiduciaries. So everybody not really successful and, you know, doing well in the field. And then they still wanted to come. So I just changed the title to a peer review or peer something group. And it just stopped. And after it must have been 10 or 15 years. It was a long, or at least 10 years we were doing it.